Welcome to this morning's Focus. Today we're taking an in-depth look at 20 years of conflict in Kashmir. Kashmir, that mystical territory nestled in the foothills of the beautiful, sprawling Himalayas. Yet the beautiful landscape hides decades of old, raw wounds. The state of Jammu and Kashmir is situated in the heart of a deeply contested zone, bordered awkwardly by China, Pakistan and India. Now, despite having a 77% strong Muslim population, Jammu and Kashmir is actually administered by India. Now, the region has been the centre of 3 conflicts between Pakistan and India since the two gained independence from the British. The first Kashmir War was in 1947, the second in 1965, and the third in 1999. Now, for the past 2 decades, though, Indian authorities have been locked in a battle against full-scale insurgency in Kashmir. Nationalists have been bitterly fighting for their independence ever since, notably under the factional leadership of the JKLF, the Jammu Kashmir Liberation Front, demanding a referendum be held at least to legitimise their bid for secession. Now, in later years, though, the rebel ranks were swelled by a number of Islamic fundamentalists using the Kashmir arena to wage global jihad, with militants taking their message well beyond the Kashmiri boundaries, as 2008's Mumbai attacks, for example, served to demonstrate. Now, this a two-pronged insurgency, therefore, that is believed to have cost the lives of some 50,000 people over the years. Well, 20 years on, 20 years in, Hans Venkat travelled to Srinagar to meet with some of the nationalists who had fought then for their independence. But before we show you Hans Venkat's report, let's go to correspondent Vikram Singh, who joins us now live from New Delhi. Vikram, if I could ask you then, first of all, how easy was it to film this report?
It was actually quite a difficult story to film for many reasons. The 2 major challenges that we faced was the first one was actually convincing people who had participated in the militancy to speak to us. Now, these are very sensitive issues, and Kashmir today, 20 years on, still remains a very tense region. These are men who have been repeatedly interrogated. They claim that they've been tortured. So to actually get them to speak in front of a camera was quite a challenge. The other major challenge was actually filming on the ground in Kashmir, in Srinagar, because there were scores of protests across the city. There were multiple incidents of clashes between protesters and police, and parts of the city were completely inaccessible to us. So filming on ground was actually quite a challenge as well.
OK, now, Vikram, obviously this conflict has been raging there for 20 years. 20 years on, there has in recent times been a sort of lull in the numbers and the death tolls. But the conflict, of course, is still rife. From the people you spoke to, from what they said, what would explain this drop, then, in the violence?
I think amongst the Kashmiri families, the people that we spoke to, there's this great sense of there being a fatigue with this conflict. People are tired of the continuing fighting between the security forces and the militants. And an entire generation of Kashmiri men have sort of, been lost to this conflict. So each family in Srinagar has in some way been affected by this conflict. And I think they're tired of the continuous losses of life, a way of life as well that has been lost. And there has been a change in sentiment. I don't think there is as much support for militancy anymore. The Kashmiri people, they recognize that they do benefit, at least economically, by remaining with India. And I think the latest the poll figures, which showed that 62% people participated in the latest elections, show that there is a greater appetite amongst the Kashmiri people for the Indian model of democracy.
OK, Vikram Singh talking to us there from New Delhi. Thank you very much for that, Vikram. We've heard there from the correspondent. Let's watch this report.
This is a part of Srinagar that Ghulam will never forget.
Look over there. Put your camera down. They're looking at us. This place is full of intelligence agents.
In January 1990, Ghulam participated in an attack against the Indian security forces, which left 4 policemen dead. The authorities have never successfully identified the attackers. That's why even today, Ghulam doesn't want his face to be filmed.
You can see over there the electricity pole and the wires hanging from it. That's where the army's vehicle was parked. We came running and opened fire. It was our first attack. People came running out, the mosque turned on their loudspeakers, and people were singing songs for independence. We were overjoyed with the support of our people.
As we leave, the hostility in the streets is palpable.
Go away!
20 years after the insurgency began, Srinagar still feels like a city under siege. Young Kashmiri Muslims continue to defy the Indian authorities. Their goal is simple: to rid Kashmir of Indian soldiers, of which there are believed to be nearly 700,000 in the region. 3 Kashmiri separatists have agreed to speak to us. They are no longer part of the armed struggle, but they strongly support it. 20 years ago, they were amongst the thousands of young Kashmiri men that crossed into Pakistan and Afghanistan to train in camps for militants.
This is my group, Al Jihad. The police used this poster to try and scare the movement. We trained to use weapons over there. I went to Afghanistan, trained there, and then went to Pakistan-occupied Kashmir. I wanted to return as soon as possible and start an armed struggle here.
Pakistan has always denied supporting the militant camps.
We saw how the Afghan Mujahideen chased away Russia. That had a big impact on us. We knew that this was the best way to get rid of India.
It is a conflict that has claimed more than 50,000 lives. Over the last few months, unidentified mass graves have been discovered across the state. In the village of Bimyar, more than 200 bodies lie in unmarked graves. Only 6 of the dead have been identified. Buried here are the bodies of men killed in encounters with the Indian armed forces. Muhammad Atta, a local farmer, says he was one of those forced to bury the bodies.
They told us that there were Afghans, that there were foreigners. But we always felt that they were from our valley, that they were Kashmiris.
Over the past 2 decades, India's repressive policies and crackdowns on militancy have succeeded in reducing the number of those willing to fight for Kashmiri independence. A permanent solution, however, continues to elude the region.
OK, so that was the report sent to us by our team, our France 24 team in New Delhi. Well, for more analysis, if we can now talk to Praveen Swami, who joins us on the line from New Delhi, who is a terrorism expert, but also a journalist in India. Thank you very much for taking time to talk to us. We heard there in the report about the jihadi element prevalent, of course, in Kashmir, but it's also important to point out that there is a difference between the Muslim fundamentalists and the moderate Kashmiri nationalists, isn't there?
Absolutely. Most of the members of the armed groups are affiliated to various extreme Islamist organizations, but there's also a relatively moderate Kashmiri nationalist political element, and it's this nationalist element India is now trying to seek some kind of political engagement with in the hope that it might lead to an eventual political resolution. We're a long way from that, though.
But, I mean, in terms of the political makeup, then, of the Kashmiris, they are, in some respects, rather divided. Is that a tact that's been exploited by the Indian government in their attempts to negotiate for peace, finally, in the region?
India has, in the past, sought to reach out to one or the other group, but the consensus that's evolved over the years is that this particular tactic isn't particularly helpful, in the sense that any one group that is engaged with then attracts reprisals from others. Several moderate leaders have been assassinated over the years. One just last month suffered an attempted assassination after India held talks with moderate Kashmiri groups. What India would like to see right now is an inclusive dialogue, but Islamist groups, particularly pro-Pakistan groups in the Kashmir Valley, aren't interested in a dialogue of this kind. Within Jammu and Kashmir itself, we sometimes forget that it's a multi-ethnic, multi-religious state, and opinions deeply divided on the way forward. There are parties which want complete independence from India. There are parties which want accession to Pakistan, and there are parties which want the status quo or even deeper accession with India. So a dialogue process involves dealing with a huge number of very disparate voices.
OK, now you mentioned, of course, the Pakistani element, and Pakistan has in the past been criticised for having too porous a border. What has been the Pakistani authorities' tact in dealing with the insurgency raging in Kashmir?
Well, until 2001, 2002, when India and Pakistan almost went to war, Pakistan quite openly supported jihadist groups operating in Jammu and Kashmir. since the India-Pakistan crisis, President Pervez Musharraf's regime cracked down to an extent on the cross-border movement of these groups. And we've seen the results of that, because since 2002, violence has declined every year on year, to a point where now, last year, less than 500 people all told, including jihadists, were killed in the fighting. That's in contrast with over 5,000 a year a decade ago. Having said that, the camps run by many of these groups, like the Hizbul Mujahideen and the Lashkar-e-Taiba, are still active. There continue to be fire engagement between Indian troops and these jihadist groups on a more or less daily basis along the line of control that divides Kashmir. And last year saw a mild increase in infiltration. So the story is far from over yet.
Okay, Praveen Swami talking to us there live from New Delhi. Thank you very much for that, Praveen, and also to our correspondent Vikram Singh, who also took part in this Focus. That's it for this edition of Focus. You can watch it again on our website. Do stay with us, though, because the morning edition does continue after this short break.